Yeah. So John co-wrote it with me. We would meet a lot to talk about things like all the various little plot strands you saw, like art and pickup and what's going on in Montreal, things like that. And we would make little notes about them and try to figure out how we could bring all this stuff together, because we didn't know. We actually had a subplot at one point about magic. He was going to get into magic tricks, and that's how he was going to bring the young girl in. And then we got to the point where we figured, well, if we're going to do this, a lot of this stuff, like the pickup stuff and the art stuff, if we're casting actors and actresses, especially if we're not paying them, it's going to be hard to write a huge script that they're then going to have to memorize. And a lot of times in the past, when I've done that, I've overwritten, and then they've came in and they don't have to memorize. It's too much work, and everyone's frustrated. So we just figured we'd try to cast people who sort of knew already what they were talking about and what they were interested in, and then we just pushed them in that direction. So we actually just ended up writing a 3-page short story that told the whole movie that we could give to the actors once we cast them. So we sort of lied to everybody when we auditioned them. We said, yeah, well, here's some script pages. We just wrote up the night before. We wrote out some scenes and had them do it. And then they never saw those script pages again. And they got the little 3-page story, and then we rehearsed it, and we would go out in the day and do it. And some of the people, like Henry, the older guy, he actually is an art historian and antique dealer, and so you could give him a piece of china or a painting, and he'll just talk about it. So that's great.
So how does that work with multiple takes?
That's very hard. We had a very set structure. So that 3-page short story was then expanded into about a 15-page blueprint. And the blueprint would say, Simon's going to ask Lee about this thing, and then Lee's not going to like that. And then they'd have their little objectives for the scene. So they could go off a little bit, but they'd always have to keep coming back to these flag parts. And so then we would cut around those flag moments. So yeah, there's scenes where he only says it once for his angle, and then that's it. That's all you're going to get. So you might not even get a reaction. So sometimes it's hard. But Henry, the older guy, again, especially, he had about 2 takes in him every time, and then he would get tired. So we just shot him first. And the young kids, they would take a little while to get warmed up, because they were not as into this kind of stuff as we were. So we would have to sit off to the side. John, at one point, if you remember the opening scene where the one guy, the pickup artist guy, is discovering it for the first time, I had given him about 45 pages of material to read over. And he wasn't as into it as we were, so he showed up on set and just said, I don't know what to say. So John got on the internet, pulled up a thing and said, here, read this bit about don't ever buy a girl a drink. So then he sits down and he reads it. So it's pretty much the first time that he's ever seen that in his life, and then he goes out and we shoot it.
Is this the first film you've made in that kind of improvised format? And if it was, what were the pros and cons that you found?
It is the first time I've done that. Yeah, usually I write big, thick scripts. The movie we made right after this that we're editing right now, we did it in the same way and got a lot of pushback because we started using professional actors. And they didn't like that very much, so we'll have to change that. Number one was, already was brought up, it's hard to do multiple takes and keep them the same. In a way, maybe that helps because we're shooting a cheap movie fast, so you want to keep it to just a few takes and keep it as fresh as possible. So the benefits of it were that when you get a really natural moment, it's coming from them, and they're feeling it. And you don't have to have big, melodramatic, excessive dialogue where people are dying or stabbing each other, hating each other, whatever. You can get these little slice-of-life moments, and they become very real, hopefully. And then the drawback, of course, is that some scenes are very loose, and they meander, and then you have to decide whether or not to keep that in the movie, if it's a style, if it works, if you're losing the audience. So.
If he had just wanted to stand up and say, amazing, bravo.
Oh, thank you.
Waiting for things to happen. And I really, really enjoyed it. I hope and I pray that this goes a long ways. It's an unusual mantra. And I don't even know what the right words are. The way you prepared the screen is amazing. Amazing and bravo. That's it.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, it's a bit strange. It has to build over time, and kind of goes all over the place. Well, I like to say that I try to trick the audience into thinking there's going to be a plot in the first 10 minutes, because you have the PI stuff and you have the protesters, and then we just kind of get rid of that and stuck with our characters. But that was what we were interested in. Also, it's scary to go film amongst the protesters. They're angry. So, anyone have a question for John?
question. Is there any question I can answer?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He had never worked on a movie before we started this, and he was not convinced that anyone would show up to the audition even. So
Yeah.
that was fun.
Yeah, my favorite story is basically I just kind of filled in the gaps. People, if we didn't have particular people to do particular things on in the crew, so he said, okay, you're going to be the sound guy. So he gives me this device we're going to use, and basically on the way to the first shoot, I downloaded the manual for this device and read it on the subway on the way to the first shoot. So any of the sound problems, that was all me. So.
You guys have told the other day about in the cast you had to change some of the language even to get in line.
Yeah. Well, because we were living in Montreal at the time, he still lives there. I moved away from there, and I don't know how much everybody knows about Montreal, but it's Quebec, essentially in Canada, is another country. It's a French country, and you drive over the border, you're in a completely different place. Montreal is fairly bilingual. Montreal is sort of a half and half English-French city, although they don't like to admit it. It's true. And you probably noticed a lot of the buildings, a lot of the areas we were at in the movie are older, they're regal, super nice. She even says at the end, oh, it looks like a castle. That is City Hall. But that's City Hall of Westmount, and Westmount is a city within the city of Montreal. Westmount is the Anglo city within French Montreal. So we wanted to write a whole script about those little tensions that exist, and originally the female character was supposed to be French. So the painter was supposed to be French, the female character was supposed to be French, her parents were supposed to be French, and they come up from the north to visit. And there was that whole language barrier issue. And we even had an actress in mind, or we had a girl in mind to play it. We used to go drink at a pub where we would write sometimes, and we saw this one waitress, we thought she was very angelic and nice, and it kind of fit. She sort of looked like she was from a Raphael painting, so we thought this will fit our movie perfectly. Approached her, she said she wanted to do it, she was very excited, and then went home and looked up her name on IMDb, and it turns out she's a real actress who was slumming it in this waitress job. And so I don't know what happened after that, but we had a few phone calls, and then she never showed up to the audition. So we thought, well, that's it. We kind of wrote the script around this actress that we didn't know. And then Lee came in, and she was such a delight and so nice, and we thought, maybe we could redo it with her and just make everybody Anglos within the city. So then you got to get some parents, randomly get some parents who speak English out of the blue, which is also a funny story. We got those parents to come out a day before they had to shoot. I didn't know anybody that age who spoke English in Montreal. So we called some people back home, and it turns out that those were the sister and brother-in-law of somebody who works with my dad. So I said, give me their number. We called them and said, hey, you want to do this thing? Well, we have to talk to you first about it because we're not actors. I said, sure, come out tomorrow to this apartment. I'll give you the address. And we'll talk about it. And if you're into it, maybe we'll do the movie. So they showed up. We talked for about 5 minutes. We brought out the beautiful actress, and she charmed them a little bit. And then they said, yeah, it seems cool. It seems cool. When do we come back to do this? I said, no, stay here. We're going to do it in an hour. So then we went out, got food, made them dinner, and shot the dinner scene. And by the time they came back from dinner, Lee had made them fall in love with her. So they loved it. They had a great time. And that's pretty much what happened. And we just cart Lee around, and she would make people fall in love with her, and then they would help us in the movie. So that was nice. Anything else?
Any other questions?
We could make this fun. You guys could point out stuff that you hated, and we could try to tell you why. That could be cute. There is that you actually can't see the movie when you watch it on DVD. It was kind of dark today, but that was not. It's not a stylistic choice. You can actually see their faces in other screenings.
So I'm not going to say anything that I hate because I need to see it again before I know. But what part, when you watch it, would you maybe change, or what part do you like the least? And having watched it again, maybe you could.
Yeah, I did because I've seen it lots of times. I like Ulysses too because I haven't heard it.
Oh, sure, okay, yeah.
But there's two things that bug me because the PI office is not a PI office, it's an empty carpet salesman's warehouse. The whole plan was to have them come in at the start and look out the window and see the throng in the streets, get it all in one space, and then do more stuff in the PI office, and that would have kind of located them there nicely. And we couldn't get that location. And so the last second we had to kind of go in and empty the room and dress it. And all those desks are just my end tables propped up on garbage. Just high enough to be the top of the screen to look like a desk. So they can't move around. The actors can't get up, so now they're hemmed in. So the whole point of letting them improv is kind of crushed in that scene. They can't move. So you'll notice that the first 10 minutes are a little locked in and stayed and a little too slow. Also, the kids' apartment, same deal. So I would say locations is one of the bigger ones. The first 10 minutes of the movie, for me, I like to get through them so I can get to the stuff where they're wandering around and listening to jazz music and saying silly things. And the pickup comes in, it's fun. And you?
What was the question? What do you like
What
the
do we
least?
cringe at?
That's a good one. Let's see. Yeah, at the beginning it does seem a little stiff. That the first scene there where they're in the apartment and sitting on those beige couches, that was my girlfriend's apartment. I had just moved in, so we got rid of those quickly. So it's a nice memory of those hideous beige couches. But other than that, yeah, I think everything was fantastic.
You should talk about when we put you on camera and you had to.
Oh yeah, I was in a scene there. You guys might have missed it. When the protesters were yelling, I was trying to dress in a certain style. I don't think I quite pulled it off. You need to be thinner to look the part. But yeah, we'd been shooting the scene where she throws up in the city hall building there at the end. We filmed that the night before, so it was maybe till about 5 in the morning we were shooting and then drinking, and then we woke up first thing to shoot the next scene. So I was too tired to really worry about it. And, I think I messed up my line, but they edited it back to say it correctly. But that was a lot of fun. That's my first role. But the new movie, stay tuned. Check the website. I'll be in the new one. I think a little bit in the background. So I'm getting started.
I guess my question is, there's been a portrayal in cinema lately, thank you, there's been a portrayal in cinema lately where people that are involved in art are so enlightened and so in touch with the world and everything, but you guys kind of did a reversal on that, where you had the people that are involved in art seem to be alienated and isolated from the rest of the world. What was the reasoning or the inspiration for that?
Well, sometimes we look at two different types of art. So here in Montreal, it's very popular to be trashy and to go buy clothes that cost $100 on the treadmill with a razor blade. And if you're going to do art, sometimes you make the painting as ugly as possible, and that seems to be what's cool right now, which I just don't particularly like that much. So we used to get into he and I would go to parties in Montreal, and we would say to people, like, look, that's a picture, it's accurately done, it's beautiful, that's nice, that's got skill, this is garbage. And people would say, you can't say it's garbage, that's just your opinion. No, it's garbage. And we would get really worked up. And we thought that was funny. We think it's funny that there's some kind of idea out there that you shouldn't have standards, when of course, if you're making a standard to not have standards, it's kind of circular. So guys who believe what Henry and Simon did in Montreal are completely alienated and set apart from the crowd and don't fit in there at all. Although in West End, they kind of do, which makes it funny. But yeah, I mean, it's not fun to make a movie where the characters that we identify with the most are so enlightened and perfect and awesome. And the characters that we identify with the least are the villains. It's way more fun to make a movie because we know ourselves. That's it. So whatever was ridiculous about ourselves, we wanted to make that young kid do. I mean, that young kid's doing, hopefully the audience doesn't turn on me. The young kid's doing 50% of the stupid things that I did when I was his age. Being really inside your own head, not understanding what's going on around you at all. People are giving you signals and telling you stuff, and you're just blindly kind of mashing your way through them and then wondering why they react that way at the end. So we thought it would be funny to do that. That's about it, yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does, thank you.
Anyone else have a question? I was curious how you chose to end it the way you did. Were there other thoughts in mind? Did you have other endings, or was that just how you always thought to do it?
That is actually the one thing that I really love about this movie, and that we pulled off closest to what I wanted. So that was very specific. We talked about that. I wouldn't have done the movie, I don't think, if you wouldn't have given me some encouragement, because it's such a weird story that has so many divergent plot lines that don't really end up going anywhere. So when I pitched it to him at the end, this is the joke, is that, okay, if you find a beautiful enough girl, and she's charming enough, what would make you fall out of love with her? Thinking, like would she steal from me? No, I'd probably still like her. Is she mean to children? No, I'd probably still like her. What if she became a communist? I would definitely fall in love with her. So the idea that I pitched him at the end was, she's pretty, and then she becomes a communist. And then they look at that and they go, oh, I don't like that at all. And she was supposed to dovetail with the protesters, and originally it was written that they were in the street. And she's in the street screaming on the barricades, and she's shaved off her hair. And so Lee said, I like you guys, but not that much. I'm not going to do that. So we had to come up with something. But the whole idea of this indicators of interest thing that we were reading about, how subcommunicating through body language and so on, that character is very verbal, and he's always talking about things that are happening, but he's not noticing things that are happening. So we wanted to have that moment of realization at the end, where he looks back, and it wasn't about an ideal, it wasn't about the job he was doing. He was so in love with her and never wanted to do anything about it, and she was right there in his house, and super friendly and super nice, and he never did anything. And then the idea was to go back and look at every female character he interacted with, and all of the opportunities they were giving him, as one guy says in the movie, to approach them as a man to a woman. All this other junk, throw it aside. And so he sees that, and it all comes back, and hopefully kind of go through the whole movie again. And that's supposed to be the transcendental moment. But there you go. Anything else? By the way, guys, we have about 12 DVDs, and you can see the whole movie on those DVDs. And if you want